Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Ewalt. I serve the Texas Tribune as Senior Director of Events and Live Journalism. Welcome to those joining us in person here in Austin and those joining us online around the state for our event titled Understanding Texas's Investment in Dementia Research. In November, Texas voters approved a constitutional amendment to invest $3 billion in dementia research over the next decade. While a lawsuit is currently delaying implementation of the Dementia Prevention and Research Institute of Texas, otherwise known as DPRIT, the initiative aims to make Texas a national leader in dementia research and prevention, driving scientific breakthroughs, attracting top researchers, and creating jobs across the state. This morning with our panel, we'll consider what this investment means for Texas and Texans once it moves forward. How will funds be distributed? How are institutions competing for grants? And how could this work translate into better care, prevention, and support for Texans living with dementia and the caregivers who support them? Our program today will run approximately 1 hour with 45 minutes for moderated conversation and 15 minutes for your questions. To get to as many questions as possible, you can submit questions through our Q&A portal at texastribune.org/ask. That's texastribune.org/ask. You can also find one of my colleagues around the room will give you a QR code or even note cards if you'd like to ask your question that way. I want to thank all those around the state who make the journalism of the Tribune, including events like this, possible by becoming Texas Tribune members. If I could just have a quick show of hands in the studio for Texas Tribune members here in attendance. So thank you so much for your support of the Tribune. And if you'd like to support the work of the Tribune, you can visit texastribune.org/support. My colleagues are also in the lobby after the program for some really cool Texas Tribune merch. So let's get to today's program and meet our panelists. Karen Fingerman is a Sonia Wilson Professor of Human Ecology and Professor of Human Development and Family Sciences at UT Austin. She studies adult development and aging, in particular social and emotional aspects of aging and assessments in daily life. She is currently the director of the Texas Longevity Consortium and the research director of the NIA-funded Center on Aging and Population Sciences. Melissa Sanchez is the Texas Senior Director of Public Policy for the Alzheimer's Association, where she leads state and federal advocacy efforts across the organization's 6 Texas chapters. For more than 10 years, she has worked with policymakers, partners, and grassroots advocates to advance policies that improve care, support, and outcomes for Texans living with Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. And Gladys Maestra is a physician scientist who is recognized for her contributions to aging and neurodegenerative research. She is the director of the Memory and Aging Center, where she leads the Rio Grande Valley Alzheimer's Disease Resource Center for Minority Aging Research and co-directs the South Texas Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. It's important to mention, because I'm sure it will come up in the conversation, she also spearheads the Maracaibo Aging Study, a study of dementia and other age-related health problems that has followed more than 2,500 subjects since 1998. Since 2016, Dr. Maestra has led a multidisciplinary team to understand the high prevalence of Alzheimer's disease and related dementias in the RGV, and to develop strategies to mitigate their impact while also advancing neuroscience research and education in low and middle income countries worldwide. Our moderator today is Texas Tribune Health and Human Services reporter Terry Langford. With that, I thank our audience, both in person and online, and turn the program over to Terry.
Welcome, everyone. Glad to see you here so early. I'm going to admit something. This one caught me by surprise, and not much surprises me about the Texas legislature. But a little more than a year ago, the idea that Texas taxpayers should fund a $3 billion dementia research fund emerged as a surprise priority of all people, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Since then, it moved quickly to voters last November, who overwhelmingly, 70% of voters in the state voted for it. And it was a large number of amendments. While a lawsuit is currently delaying the implementation of DPRIT, the state is working to make the DPRIT initiative a reality, and they are actively in court, I can tell you that right now. But the fact that it emerged as a surprise priority of the lieutenant governor, that won such bipartisan support, was remarkable. And the idea behind it is simple. Use the fund to make Texas a national leader in dementia prevention by attracting top researchers and creating jobs across Texas. So today, I kind of want to talk behind the scenes, what's going on with policymakers, and also sort of what the conversations are at universities right now with $3 billion at stake. Melissa, I'm going to start with you because I think we were all in 2024 when this news of this came down, we were all kind of struck by it. And can you talk to me about those early conversations with lawmakers getting this through the legislature? Was it an easy sell or were there challenges?
Yeah. So I think, like you, Terry, we were a bit surprised when we saw the press release, the press announcement in November of 2024, but we were excited. It was long overdue that Texas, began investing in brain research, in brain health, something that other states have been doing for years and years. And so this was an opportunity. We saw this as a great opportunity for Texas to, kind of become competitive in this space. And but I think there was a buildup to this moment. And Representative Symphonia Thompson, as a lot of us in the policy field call her Miss T, and I think T stands for tenacity, and that's something she definitely has. Began kind of with this movement back in 2019. She first introduced legislation to create the Mental Health and Behavioral Health Institute of Texas. And every year since then, reintroduced that legislation. Every session, it looked a little bit different. It then became kind of the Mental Health and Brain Institute, and then another session, it was the Brain Institute. But each year she garnered more support, and every session it passed in the House. It was in the Senate that it was kind of left to, sometimes die or never got the votes that it needed. And I think that, Representative Thompson, other dementia stakeholders across the state have been working on this for years. And the association has been, also laying the groundwork for years, working with legislators, educating them on the rising prevalence of dementia in the state, the rising cost to Medicaid. And so when I think all the stakeholders saw Lieutenant Governor, take that kind of a bold stand, we knew this is exactly what needed to happen. When the Lieutenant Governor in Texas puts his power behind something and says that it's going to be one of his top priorities, we kind of knew that was going to be what was going to seal the deal in the Senate, which is where, we needed that kind of last push to get us over.
I know that many conservatives had some issues about this when it was first proposed in 2024. Some were saying this is not the role of taxpayer dollars getting behind research. This is the role of private industry. Did you hear a lot of that as it was coming through last year?
We did hear some of it. I think, nothing's an easy sell in the Texas legislature. And so, there were hard conversations that had to be had. But I think dementia really resonates, again, across party lines when you're able to show data to support it. And, there's data that shows that, investing in dementia research and investing in early intervention can save money down the line. And so then I think, lawmakers started seeing this as a smart investment and rather as a cost to the state. The state is already investing $4.3 billion annually from taxpayer dollars to Medicaid for dementia services. And so this is already costing our state an exorbitant amount annually. And so really this is something that is seen as a smart investment. I think to the argument specifically about, whether this is something that should be left for the private industry, given the complexity of this disease, and I think Dr. Maestre can speak to that, but more than just private investment is needed at this point. And private, dollars are great for drug discovery, clinical trials, and getting drugs to the market. But it's the public dollars that are going to really invest in those areas that aren't as maybe profitable for private companies, like early detection, prevention, risk reduction, disparities, better care models. Those are all areas that, our private industry is likely not going to be investing in. And so this gives us that public partnership that Texas is always so proud to do.
Dr. Fingerman and Dr. Maestra, tell me what the conversations are like at universities right now. I know that a lot of people are interested in this funding for research. What are those conversations like right now?
Well, I can say a little bit, maybe even on behalf of both of us, is that we're working across institutions. Already in May, we started having Zoom conversations with the leaders across UT San Antonio, Gladys, the people at UT Health. We all began to get together on Zoom and say, how are we going to attack this problem from every angle? We want to get started in the earliest years. We want to get started with people in midlife to keep their brains going. And we want to figure out how to help the people who are already experiencing it. And we're looking at it at every level. We have, I mean, I know UT Austin the best because that's where I am. We have 100 researchers on campus in every single unit. We have our biology group getting together. We have our population scientists getting together. We have them talking to each other. We have a major computer science department at UT Austin. The state has the Texas Advanced Computing Center. We have one of 5 in the country. We're leveraging everything, everybody. This has brought everybody on board. And I don't know how other diseases, like how they work together, but I really don't feel like this is in competition. I feel like maybe it's that if you went into this field, you went in with a mission. We are very driven by the idea that we are going to conquer this disease. And whoever it's going to take, whoever we can bring on board. And because the legislature did this, it's a huge conversation. We have the people studying autism who came to us and said, hey, wait a minute, we have a genetic technique. Maybe we can apply it to what you're doing. So I think the conversation, the energy that the state gave us to seriously attack this is phenomenal. And I'm partly speaking for you because I said this morning, I've never met you in 3D, but we know each other. I mean, we know each other. And we've wanted, the moment is now. We've been gearing up for it. And let you say, let you confirm that everything I said was true.
Talk to me, especially the Rio Grande Valley. You've been doing a lot of research down there as you have communicated and been such an advocate down there. A lot of research has not. We haven't seen really great research the research that we have seen, a lot of it tends to be, predominantly white and privileged. And what we are really understanding now is how many people who are, Alzheimer's and dementia crosses all demographics, but is a particularly prominent in the Hispanic communities. And I want you to talk about that and also what the conversations are at UTRGV about this opportunity.
Sure. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And indeed, I reassure everything Karen said about working together with other institutions. So I think because where we are in an area, in a region of very much need at every level. So the conversations at UTRGV start like this. I am me, but I am not me anymore. And that's a quote of a patient, of a partner in research. And UTRGV is known for a couple of things, but most of all for our community engagement, how we listen, how we care about the participant, the partner in research, the patient that we have in front of us. 80% of the time is a Hispanic. It's a person that perhaps has a lot of social needs. So we have to listen. We have to understand, because in academia we are privileged, whether we are here and able to do this because we could. So our conversations are really around how can we make discoveries that serve our people? How can we be a resource for the rest of the organizations, institutions, private industry, And we began doing so the Alzheimer's Research Center was established by the National Institute of Aging in 2018, and then the South Texas in 2021. So we've been working together for more than 8 years.
You've been doing an incredible job sort of documenting what a lot of people, it's a whole series of brain disorders that people were not getting diagnosed properly, people are not being identified. You've done a lot of surveying down there. You're following a lot of families down there.
We say we accompany them.
Yes.
We want to be with them to make decisions, the right decisions. We want to translate the recent advancements. For example, the fact that we now have biomarkers that are accessible, that allow to do really quite a good job at diagnosis or at least stratifying the risk of a person that is at high risk. But how do you tell that? How do you convey that? And what do you do with that information?
How is this fund going to help you accomplish that more? What are some of the ways that you see this funding helping the sort of roles both of you all have at universities? Like, how do we see this in real time?
So we've been doing, we've been successful with funding from the National Institute of Aging. And with that, we have been, for example, cohorts of people with Alzheimer's, with people with memory loss, with Parkinson's. And now we are, some of them we have seen for 3 or 4 years. So we know their needs, but we didn't have the ability really to go into their homes and really implement the changes they need. We've been, doing the best we can. We hope that with these funds, we are able to develop techniques, programs, and implement them where there are more needed.
Specifically in the legislation, it talks a lot about research, but do you feel like the research, the science behind dementia, trying to create a sort of moonshot project to solve, some say, are we going to cure this? Or are you hopeful that some of this funding will also help what is a large financial burden in Texas, which is better programs for families, better programs for caretakers? Do you see that happening? Do you have any indication? Maybe, Melissa, is this a conversation that happened while it was going through the legislature?
Yeah, absolutely. And for the Alzheimer's Association, that was always something that was front and center, was ensuring that caregivers and patients was not an afterthought in this legislation, and that it was, that we were not just going to be focusing on pharmacological research, that we were looking at better caregiver models to reduce hospitalizations, to reduce caregiver burnout. I think deeper to healthcare systems, our healthcare systems are stretched so thin because of dementia. And so for our healthcare systems, our healthcare professionals, DBRIT can really be a lifeline. Bringing in, attracting specialists, researchers, top doctors to Texas, like CPRIT did, the Cancer Prevention Research Institute of Texas, which since its inception brought over 300, specialty doctors and researchers to Texas, making us the go-to place for cancer care. And so this is, I think, what our healthcare systems are hoping to achieve with DBRIT, is getting that additional resources, and that in turn helps folks who are living with the disease, families who are trying to access a diagnosis. It's an increase to access to get that earlier detection, earlier diagnosis, which then alleviates managing the disease, allows them to participate in clinical trials, and really bolsters that research pipeline, which is really what DBRIT is about. And so I think it's a win-win for healthcare systems, for families, for caregivers, and I'm hoping that we'll see the same success that we saw with CPRIT.
Thank you.
Can I
Go,
say
yeah,
something?
absolutely. Jump
I
in.
say I want to see more. I want to see more than we're seeing with CPRIT, because I want to
CPRIT or DBRIT?
No, I want to see more with DBRIT than what we are seeing on CPRIT. So the brain is a very mysterious organ. I'm not saying that prostate or kidney or heart are not, but brain is different. And we need to provide options, improve access where older adults are in the community. So we want to see very close community centers where cognitive stimulation, it's the norm, the arts, the socialization. We need the cities to change because now these car-centric cities are not helping to older adults, and even for us, it's not healthy. So I want to see not only the investments of deep breath inside the labs, but in the cities and the communities.
You bring up a really great point, and as we all well know, particularly not everyone in Texas lives in a Houston, an Austin, a San Antonio, or a Dallas. Our older populations in rural areas are growing faster at a faster clip than anything, and they are traveling long distances. And you bring up a really good point, and it will be interesting to see if this spurs more of an unlocking of other dollars to come up with better, city planning, community centers that we haven't seen before.
Terry,
Go ahead.
if you don't mind, I'll comment, because I said we were meeting last May, and one of the things that we've been talking about is how do we get statewide access? If we have the resources in Austin, what are we going to do to disseminate? And that is something we were talking about and that I think DPRIT will enhance. Also, stepping back just a moment on this pharmaceutical, when you look at the data, the genetic, if you will, components of Alzheimer's or dementia account for less than 50% of your likelihood of getting it in the late life form, which means that the research that we're going to do is going to figure out the rest of it. How does it interact? And so I think in that regard, we're going to see that emphasis. And when we talk about, we both have these NIA centers, they put a big emphasis on the non-biology of it as well. So what is that other component? How are we going to address it? We know that the family is the constellation that actually improves the health and well-being of the person with dementia, not just that person, but if we really want to do something and bring people to the optimal level of functioning, we're going to have to address the family in order to do it. And I think the research will do that. I'm going to make one final comment on the CPRIT thing. When people ask about competition, I'm like, oh no, we are a united community, but we are competing with CPRIT, because if they brought treatments and whatever, we're going to go way farther than that. We are, we're a competitive team. So yeah.
I think for a lot of people, and probably a lot of people in this room who are watching in the audience, especially if you have a family member who has been diagnosed or you are caretaking for a family member, I think while they're encouraged to hear about the DPRIT, they've been led down this path of hopefulness before. I mean, I think if you look at the last 20 years of research, for families who are experiencing this right now, we haven't seen the meter move far in the science. And is that all it takes is a whole lot of money? Or, what else is at work here? How do we prevent this from becoming some sort of boondoggle or tunnel vision project that kind of is not holistic, not looking at community? What are we going to, I just think there's a lot of frustration among Texans on this issue about, yeah, we've heard that there's going to be a breakthrough. We've heard that people are actively working on this, but we haven't seen a lot in the science. What about this is going to make that different? Can any of you talk about that?
Yeah, I'll touch a little bit and then feel free to jump in. I think it's fair to say that, a lot of Texans that are battling with this disease, their caregivers are feeling frustrated. But I think, we work with our advocates, who are folks who are, former caregivers, current caregivers, persons living with the disease, and they're committed to this fight, right? I think DPRIT will allow us to, increase awareness of the progress that has been happening. Has it been fragmented, yes. Has it been slower than we'd like? Yes, but there has been progress. I think Dr. Maestre referred to, blood biomarkers is now an option, for early detection and diagnosis, which is huge. Being able to detect early in the disease has huge implications. And, there are 2 new treatments, on the market within the last several years that slow the progression of the disease. For folks living with the disease, another year is a big deal. That's being able to see, potential a granddaughter getting married or a new great-granddaughter, right? Getting to meet a new great-granddaughter or grandson. So that time is so valuable for families living with the disease. And then just recent studies, that were funded by the Alzheimer's Association, the Pointer study, which shows that there are certain lifestyle interventions that can reduce the risk of developing dementia. And so all of that is progress. I don't think that DPRIT is, beginning of anything. It's really just, I think, boosting the momentum, keeping the momentum, ensuring that there's a continued investment. And then I think bringing all of, to Karen Fingerman's point, bringing everybody together. And I think that's what DPRIT allows. It's, also going to be a great convener to all the great work that's happening in Texas already.
Yeah, I would add that when we, started at UTRGV only 10 years ago, and from the very beginning, Alzheimer's was a signature for growth. It was mostly genetics, it was mostly biomedical, to try to understand this specific person that I have in front of me. With the years, we learn that there are lifestyles and life history influences the way our brains age. So, it's not hard to understand that, but how do you implement that as a research question? And we've been able to do this to look at how adversity, for example, translate into brain signatures. So bringing together, creating ecosystems that really bring the life perspective of the research partner. It's incredibly important for us. So I think that our main strategy is community engagement, but also developing our own workforce. We agree we need to bring national experts, international experts, but we need to develop our own workforce at every level, at the clinical, research, and at the community social care side.
If you had asked me 20 years ago in my career, I would have said, yeah, no, not going to happen. But I think the timing is phenomenal. The moment is now. If we can detect it early already, we haven't talked about AI, but we have the capacity. That is also game-changing. We have the capacity to begin to look at all of these levels of, the lifestyle, the genetic, put it together. Begin to look and say, and to your point, individual, what's going on with this individual? How does it differ? Right now we have this big umbrella of dementia, but everybody's experience is different. And being able to begin to target that, we have the technology, the resources, the energy. The energy is the thing that DPRIT brought us, this focus, and we're going to pull it all together. We've got so many levels. We've got you in the community. We've got so many levels now of understanding and infrastructure. It really is the moment.
I think it just gives us more shots on target.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Sarah?
More shots on target.
I mean, I think as someone who covers this, I'm always hopeful, but I'm always, we are a frugal state, and I am glad to see this kind of expenditure on a major health issue that, we were talking earlier before. I end up in conversations all the time during my commute. I'm a bus rider, and conversations with strangers with what I do for a living, they often turn to Alzheimer's and dementia real quick. We have a whole sandwich generation of people delaying childbirth, and they are now handling a burden of both raising children and shouldering the care of their older parents with health concerns. So, we we are seeing this in real time and affecting Texans. What are some of the things that, I mean, where would you like, I mean, obviously, when these grants are dispersed, when they're approved, when this happens, a lot of it's going to go to sort of the biomedical, the neuroscience. But what is top of mind right now that you would like to see some of this funding go to? Transportation planning, to more community clinics, more early diagnosis? I mean, what exactly would you like to see some of this money go first to, as well as the
Well,
science?
I guess we all have different wishes. I would say my number one will be access.
Access.
Because if you are isolated and you are afraid and you are noticing the memory problems, it's already late. We want people to get before it's noticeable. Before. And for that, you need access. And also, you need it to be close home. You need to be with somebody that cares about you. So I think that the ecosystem for a brain disorder is not the same as for any other organ. I mean, we are a whole person and we try to be person-centered, but we need to realize the vulnerabilities, the social value of a person, how much it changes when a disease like this affects the brain.
Karen?
Well, I mean, again, Melissa may be able to speak to this as well, but it seems to me that one of the issues that people face, they have the family member, they're bringing the family member, and they get referred to multiple different places. They don't know where to find the information, and so on. So I think it's kind of, multi-step. We need to understand all of the different lifestyle factors. We need the kinds of trials that you have been running to get those together. And then, to Gladys's point, we need to get it to the people. So I think, again, our clinic, your clinic, we try to be multimodal. So you arrive and you're one-stop shop. And that's something, both having the knowledge of what needs to be, given to people, and having a one-stop shop would be ideal. And I know we're aiming towards that. You get there and we know, here's our people who can, again, we've done the AI kinds of things. We know what you need, and we know how to get you there without sending you all over the place looking for it. And putting that across the state. I mean, that's big. That's a big goal. And that's the kind of thing where you need big funding. But I'll let you speak. I mean, you know more than I do.
I would agree. I think access is a big one, but I think overall, I think just creating a dementia-capable workforce is something that I would like to see come out of DBRIT. I think once folks do eventually get the diagnosis, they're left kind of like, well, come back and see us in 6 months. And I think something that they do great down in the valley is that they accompany them through the disease, through the journey. And that's something that's so critical and is lacking. And I think especially in rural, Texas, where, you don't have specialty doctors. You have, primary care physicians that are having to, become trained. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Are being
Right.
that front line to dementia. And quite honestly, they're not trained to do that in medical school on giving dementia diagnosis. Much less, do care planning services for the family after diagnosis and present them with the options that are available. But then I think also ensuring that, the great stuff that does come out of DPRIT, whatever goes to market, that we do see it in clinics, that we see it in the community, and that it's shared with Texans in a way that's digestible and accessible to them, and in ways that they understand, where are our dollars going, right? And so that there's that transparency as well.
No, those are all good.
So empowering every Texan, I think it's very important. So, like when these blood-based biomarkers came out, I mean, really it was unthinkable. Think if you can have a biomarker for schizophrenia, for example. That's how we thought of a biomarker for Alzheimer's. It's almost impossible, we thought. Now we have it. And then, of course, the restrictions, who's going to give the results and all that. Guess what? Now it's direct to consumer. If you don't want your health insurance to know, if you don't want, everybody to know, then you just go and buy the test. And then they come with an app and So is this, I'm not advocating for this. I'm saying this is happening, and this is going to happen more and more, even with the treatment, even with the treatment. So we need to empower everyone. And I think that to prevent dementia, we need to begin at Head Start. That's how early I think we need to begin preventing dementia.
Did you say Head Start?
At Head Start.
No, I agree. I had an analogy for that. It's like tooth decay, right? I mean, we don't want to wait till you're losing your teeth. We want to start as early as possible to keep, because once the brain begins to deteriorate, then it's too late. And to build the brain as strong as possible, you have to start early. That's not going to be for those of us who are a little farther along. We want to be addressing the maintenance and things, but if we want to leave a legacy for our grandchildren, I think DPRIT puts that there. It's a long-term investment. Find out what we need in the Head Start, and let's keep these kids from being where we are right now.
So we are developing programs with the Brownsville Independent School District, for example, where we talk about how do you get bored? What do you do when you get bored? Why is this important? To recognize, that certain things need to change in your life, even if you are 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever age. If you get bored, that's a sign of something. And how can we promote cognitive stimulation, creativity, for example, imagination at any age, please. Forget that, we need to be creative, we need to envision, we need to see with our mind things. And a lot of people are very stressed out. They don't do that anymore, or being playful. So I think that to prevent dementia, we need to involve the school teachers and the school communities.
Okay. I want to save time for questions from the audience, and I know you all probably have some for our wonderful panelists here, so I would like to open up for any questions. Go ahead, sir.
Shall I go to the mic?
I think we have, do we have? Sorry. Here, I'll give you the mic. I'll give you my mic.
Thank you. I had a traumatic brain injury twice. And anyway, I'm a friend of Leslie Brianna's, Harris County Commissioner, and Mayor John Whitmer of the city of Houston. And what can local politicians do to help get this dementia research program kick-started more? I mean, like given the jump, push it more.
Well,
into,
I think I can answer the immediate question right there, which is there is a lawsuit. There is a group of voters who are representing themselves who have filed a lawsuit claiming that election equipment that tabulated the votes on this one issue did not do so correctly. I'm trying to recall this from the lawsuit.
Certified.
What? Yeah, it
They
wasn't
weren't certified.
Wasn't certified. The process was flawed, for lack of a better legal term here. So while that lawsuit is in play, it's been stalled. But I will say that the Office of the Attorney General, which is representing the state right now in this case, is vigorously defending the state and pushing this forward. So I think we're going to see, hopefully we will see a resolution quickly. It looks that way so far from what I can see. The next hearing is in a couple of weeks. So we'll stay tuned, but we will be reporting on every aspect of that. You may know more.
No, I just want to kind of to also his question about, what can local, cities do. I think, and I think maybe Dr. Maestra can talk a lot about what they do in the RGV. They do a great job. But there are, so the Department for State Health Services has an Alzheimer's disease program, which has a dementia-specific grants program that the Alzheimer's Association advocated hard for to create. And so it does, it is I think it's in its second year. It just finished its first pilot year. But these are grants that are available to local county public health departments to enable their capacity to serve the dementia community in their counties and in their cities. I know there's, I think, 2 counties down in the valley that received this grant. There's, I think, Austin also received part of this grant as well. And so it really enables the local communities to begin, helping create pathways for folks who are living with the disease, helping create pathways to get that earlier detection and diagnosis, and then also providing those community-based resources once there is that diagnosis for families that are looking for support.
I think someone's got the mic. Yeah. We had some questions too.
Well, just a reminder, for questions, you can submit your questions at texastribune.org/ask. My colleague Mia also has some cards right there, and that's so that we can get to as many questions as possible, and so our live stream audience can hear the questions being asked. Jennifer from Austin asks, what do our experts see as other models for leading in the area of dementia research and/or healthcare delivery from a state level or in other states, other countries?
Well, I could say that the biomedical model has been the dominant model, and it is important. But even with the medtech companies and the biotech companies, we need to think about the context in which the individual lives and resides. So we are seeing much more about that, and also the involvement of older adults of all different life experiences and with different level of cognitive performance. So I think it's no longer going to be just in labs, a very sterile kind of environment. I think, like we see in other countries, how this has been extremely important.
A community-based.
To go beyond,
Right.
or to extend the biomedical model.
Right, to have more of a community-based health.
So responsive to the needs of the person, and so translation is easier. And also not having just hubs of excellence, but having developed the capacity to address local needs, even from the biomedical point of view, because we have been very fixed into certain models of disease, and now we are learning that was not sufficient to accelerate enough.
So what you're saying is a more integrated kind of process.
Exactly.
Right.
Thank you.
There are a couple questions here that are, I think, asking about what can be included that's adjacent to dementia itself, but kind of relationships. I'm going to ask this question, Steve from Austin. I'm interested in the relationship between frailty and dementia and maintaining health through lifestyle interventions such as diet, physical activity, and sleep. My question is, will funding priorities include prevention and treatment research, or when will, and I'm sure this was discussed briefly, but like when will funding priority guidance be released?
Yeah, so that was another part of crafting the legislation, and so the way the DPRIT was crafted is that at least 20% of the funds have to go towards preventative measures or researching prevention, options. And I think, what was the second part of that question?
No, it's will funding priorities include prevention and treatment research, and then when will funding priority guidance be released?
And so I think, as far as the other kind of priorities, a lot of that is going to be determined by the oversight committee. So that was also embedded into the legislation, that there must be an oversight committee. The oversight committee is a 9-member body that's appointed. 3 members are appointed by the governor, 3 by the lieutenant governor, and 3 by the speaker of the House. And so then they hire the CEO of DPRIT, and they'll be making a lot of those decisions as a body, as far as kind of guidelines and what areas they want to take into account for DPRIT research.
And again, I realize this may have been discussed early on, but Donna from Houston, how can we ensure that all human subjects research funded through DPRIT includes family caregiver support?
I'm not sure we could do all of it that way, but I think that when we talk about the idea of prevention and treatment, I was saying a little earlier that the heart of it is the caregiver. So if we come up with something that is actually effective, we're going to be needing to work with the whole family. If doing this will help someone maintain their cognitive abilities longer, if doing this will help someone continue to communicate more, the actual day-to-day is going to come and have to involve the family. Also, going back to the prior question, prevention, lifestyle, is that we are making progress in that area, that we do see it as both prevention and treatment. When we know that exercise will do this to prevent it, exercise also is a great intervention. Melissa was talking earlier that there has been one trial, not in Texas, but it's an initial trial looking at lifestyle impact on preventing and maintaining the cognition and even a little bit of reversal. And I feel like the kinds of funding we're going to have, we're going to amplify that, and we're going to figure out how to do that for each person and each lifestyle.
And if I could just add, I think it's important to also recognize that, this is not going to be the cure-all, kind of response, that it's going to take sustained kind of, collaboration between all dementia stakeholders to continue this momentum, to continue educating our lawmakers about the issues, particularly for caregivers. Texas has done a great job historically investing in dementia research, but I think where we have opportunity is in investing in dementia care and support. So those are separate dollars, and those are other states like Florida, Wisconsin, Ohio, Georgia, all invest in just specifically in care and support at a much higher rate than Texas does. And so there's still opportunity for Texas to, I think, increase its investment in just care and support dollars.
So, I mean, obviously there's, and I mean this in the best way, a kind of competitive spirit of let's lead the way. But you just mentioned a couple of states and how we're leading. I think it comes back to the first question of where are there opportunities to learn from, as Texas leads the way, to also learn from what's working elsewhere, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so I think one state we often like to look to is Florida. And Florida invests about $70 million per year in just care and support, dementia care and support dollars. They have robust respite care programs, caregiver support programs. Another one that's something that the association has been working on for the past year is a model based off of the Georgia Memory Net. And again, this goes to increasing access, particularly for rural parts of the state where they don't have a specialty doctor. So it's a wheel and spoke kind of model for dementia care that really looks to refine patient workflow and empowers primary care physicians to really step up in this dementia process and allow them to be kind of the go-to, but working in tandem through telehealth with a memory care clinic or a neurologist, in one of the major, cities. And so these are all models that we're looking at that have been effective in other states, and I think that Texas can learn from.
Susan from Marfa asked something that's more inward-looking at Texas, but I imagine also speaks to the kind of work Dr. Maestra is doing in the Valley. Is anyone mapping where resources for care and caregivers are and are not in Texas? So where are the geographic gaps, county by county?
Boy, that sounds like a Texas Tribune project in the making. But anyway.
Yeah, it's a very important question, and I think that Texas has an infrastructure that could be used to answer this. For example, the Aging Well Texas ADWA committee, for example, the Silver Legislature. So I've been interacting with them and generating some white papers around topics like housing in this, affordable housing in the state, for example, things like that. But it's at the minimum level. So we need just to increase this. We need to increase the interest in learning about our own state and developing home and community services. But most than anything, we need to lower the stigma, and we haven't touched that. It's embarrassing. It is sometimes really, negative to say that you may have a brain disorder, from depression to Alzheimer's to schizophrenia. So we need to talk about this. We need to be more open. And I think that goes with how we as a biomedical workforce relate to people. I think we need to look more the person as a person and not as a disease walking around.
I think that's a really good question. The question I get from readers most, or one of the many questions I get, is how do I find resources? It is tough in Texas. I can tell you, as a family member in memory care, I can tell you firsthand, it is a struggle. And it's sort of like, Texans are having to go to each other to find out, we have this great thing called the internet, but it's not very good at mapping resources. And I hope to see some of this money spent on a better mapping tool and a better, resources, and not something that just points you in the way of private care,
Yeah, and if I can, shameless plug, for the Alzheimer's Association, we do have a 24/7 helpline. So for any Texans that are listening that are, dealing with this situation right now or just don't know where to go, I encourage you to visit, alz.org or call our 24/7 helpline. But I also want to give a shout out to the Department of State Health Services Alzheimer's Disease Program, because they've really been doing a great job in this specific area about kind of surveying the needs and gaps for dementia care, but also for caregiver support. And so they are working closely with Texas A&M in doing surveys across the state to see what are the needs, what are the gaps, where are they, bringing together, there's the Alzheimer's State Partnership, which is open to the public, where it brings all of the relevant stakeholders and saying, okay, what services do you offer? How do we get these out into the community? So they're doing great work, but it's a lot.
It's a big state.
Yes.
I'm going to just add one thing we haven't talked about is that dementia is more than one disease or has more than one cause. So I know there may be people listening as well who Alzheimer's is by far the most common, and it mixes with a lot of other forms, and it's really going to be the heart of our understanding. But by the same token, there's Lewy body dementia, there's frontal temporal lobe dementia, there are other forms. What you just mentioned, those organizations also have the 24/7 hotlines. They might get back to you on a weekday. I mean, they may not be there at 2 a.m. when your loved one is really having problems, but they will get back to you and help you locate the resources in the state of Texas. So really, if you're listening and you need that help and you have a specific form, my experience has been that you're mission driven. You're here not to make a profit or something. You're here because something has happened in your life that makes this important, and all of those agencies are really, I believe, going to help too. It's not where we want to be as a state. I absolutely believe the listener, we need more coordination. You shouldn't have to call the 24-hour helpline. That's kind of a last resort kind of thing, but it is there if you need it as a resource. And we're going to do better. And I love these questions because I'm thinking to myself, okay, you, a researcher, go apply for a grant to do that. We've already got everything lined up. Thank you, audience.
So there were a couple process questions here that you may or may not be able to answer based on what's already in place. But what concrete steps are being taken or policies put in place to make sure that DPRIT funds are available to smaller institutions? This person references CPRIT and that it overwhelmingly, went to larger institutions. And this person writes, with such a multifaceted problem, the likelihood of the perfect people all being at one institution is very low. So what do we know right now in terms of process?
I'm going to turn to you, Melissa, on that. That is a great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think there's a lot of, people who have similar questions. What is it going to look like? What kind of areas are going to, what other diseases, right? What other neurological diseases are going to be included? And I think some of those answers we'll have to wait and see with the oversight committee. There will be also a peer review committee, which specifically reviews the grants and makes those decisions. But I think in the discussions leading up to DPRIT, it was about creating access to these research dollars, right? And ensuring that it's not just your medical institutions that are, which has traditionally been the case, that are having access to these dollars, but it's also maybe, you know, community-based organizations that are looking at better care models. And, you know, there's so much great work happening at Rice University, Trinity, you know, all these other, that aren't affiliated with a medical institution, but are doing great work. And so ensuring that they have, you know, access to those dollars as well is important.
I guess you referenced peer review committee. For those who may not know what that means, how is that different than other kind of oversight? What does that mean?
Right.
You all work in that regularly, so I don't know if you all want to cover that.
Yeah, that's when you bring experts to look at the project and to assign a merit score. And that's one point where the trick can come. For example, if you invite only people that are expert in molecular pharmacological targets, those people are going to say, exercise, what's new? We don't need that access. You know, people have to go. So every single project, you know, that does not align with the view of the disease and the expertise of the reviewer might get a negative. And that's how traditionally we have been excluded from many initiatives. So we hope that there is a fair representation according to the needs of Texas.
Sort of a multidisciplinary peer review.
Yes, yes, and considering also the geographic need, the differences in needs, and
So it's not everybody from
yes,
the Texas Medical Center. No, I love the Texas.
Yeah, no,
But
no.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
yeah, we all can contribute if we target excellence.
Yeah. I mean, so what they're referring to is that they try to take the top scientists to actually look at the science and say, is this going to go somewhere? Is this based on what we know? Is it going to make a big discovery? You know, what's going to be the impact? And what Gladys is saying is that sometimes the big experts are all from, you know, one location.
place, right.
One place. And they're one discipline. And what we know about this disease is we need every level represented. But I do want to assure the taxpayers, if you will, that this is very strict process. When you do peer review, they really, I mean, what I've seen of the grants from CPRIS, what they ask is very high-level planning. And it's also, so you know, we do a lot of reporting to make sure that our grants are making the discoveries that they want them to. And it looks like that's the model they're going to use. And so I want to reassure you, we are going to do top science, and we want to make a call that we're going to do top science that's interdisciplinary, that really gets at the problem. So hopefully with the right peer review.
If you think how much money goes into failed clinical trials, think about that. It's a lot of money that it gets, you know, lost because clinical trials do not fill the numbers. People are not retained. People do not complete. And so it was a good idea. It is a good idea, but how expensive it is just because the needs of the population are not considered. The engagement is not there.
I have one last question here, then I'll turn it back to Terry to close us out. But this person writes, there has been and continues to be a large disconnect between the public and science. And this person, you know, specifically gets into politics and accountability of this money going toward research. But there's another question in here that I think would be a good last one of, going forward, how do you envision, beyond opportunities like this, of educating the broader public, including those who may be skeptical, that the funding of this science and treatment is powerful, especially for one that affects so many Texans?
So I think dissemination, communication, editorial projects, but I truly believe working with schools is a good start. Kids go home and they share what they learn. If it's relevant, if it was delivered in a way that is fun, maybe with a game. So I do believe, I agree, the public communication of science, public communication of medicine is not good. And we can improve it. We know how. Educators have told us for many, many years, and journalists as well. The work that you guys do, it's very important for us. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yeah, I think we've all learned, especially in the last 5 years, science is not its own best advocate, and and that's unfortunate. But I think you know, I think we've all learned some hard lessons and how to explain better what we're doing. If we want, you know, if science wants the public support, they're going to have to do a better job. I like to think that here at Texas Tribune, we're trying to make them
Yes,
do that
definitely. Yeah.
Good job, yeah.
a lot more. But you know, there's huge room for improvement on that issue. And I think I hear this every day from Texans. They want better communication from their scientific community. So.
I really appreciate that you put this panel together to let us do that more. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for being here. I really appreciate the turnout and the questions. And if you like events like this and you want to see more stories on issues like this, I really encourage you to become a Texas Tribune member. Go to texastribune.org. It's really simple and kind of painless. So please join today.